Hello, this is Adam again, and we are back with another video of ranking Agatha Christie's 15 favorite, well, my ranking of Agatha Christie's 15 best novels that and murder mysteries. So if you've seen my last video, you know that my number 15 choice was the Seven Dials mystery. So today we're moving up to number 14. And so this is one that I think I've seen a lot of Agatha Christie ranking videos, and I think for a lot of people, this one would be higher on their list of personal favorites. This is one that oftentimes gets to be in the upper, is considered one of Agatha Christie's upper echelon murder mysteries. And some people, I've seen a lot of these where some people claim that this is their very favorite one. So you may, if you're watching this video, you may think that I have this one too low. And if you do, please let me know in the comments down below why you think I have it too low and why you think it should be ranked higher. And it often is ranked higher. It is number 14 for me is going to be Crooked House. Agatha Christie's Crooked House. There it is. Another one of Agatha Christie had this habit of she liked to have her novels based on, at least have part of her novel or an idea from her novel or even just the title of a novel based on a nursery rhyme. And so 1, 2, Buckle Your Shoe, Hickory Dickory Dock, Crooked House. Yeah, so she's got, and then There Were None. These are all Agatha Christie novels that are based at least on the idea of a nursery rhyme, and some of them, like and then there were none, are heavily dependent upon the nursery rhyme to kind of complement the story, and then some other ones don't have very much resemblance to the nursery rhyme, other than just maybe a clever title. And this is one of those that doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the nursery rhyme. It just has kind of maybe a clever title and a connection, and just in kind of a conceptual connection. And I also guess I should mention A Pocket Full of Rye would be another one that is kind of has the nursery rhyme theme to it. Some people think Agatha Christie overdoes this, and some people tend to enjoy it. I don't really have a strong opinion about it. So let me tell you why I like Crooked House so much. It is my number 14 novel out of all the 60 plus novels of Agatha Christie that I've read so far, but it is not my top tier favorite. There's a few things, and I'll get into this later in the video. There are a few things that keep it out of my personal top 10 or even top 5. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's very, very good. Again, it's my number 14. But I don't think it's perfect. So what is Crooked House about? Crooked House is one of these things that Agatha Christie does in several of her novels, and it's just a great idea, and I really, really like it. It is the idea that there's a large family comes together, and there are the patriarch of the family. In this case, his name is the family is the Leonidas family, and the patriarch of the family, his name is Aristide. He is an 80-plus-year-old man. He's in his mid 80s, and he has lived a long and very, very successful life, and he is well regarded. And one of the interesting things about this murder mystery is that Aristide is pretty much liked by everyone. His family really, really likes him, and he's a very wealthy man. He made his fortune starting off with just one restaurant, and then that became several restaurants, and then he started a catering business. And so he's been a very, very successful, and, a Greek immigrant that came to England and built his fortune up from next to nothing. And so a real success story, and a really nice guy. He's been very generous to his family. And so here's one of the things that I really love about these Christie novels that are, and you'll see this again as we go through the top 15 books. It's a family murder mystery, and it's going to be someone who's in the family. So you get all this, the family all gathers together, and in this case, they gather together at the family estate. It's called the Three Gables. It's west of London, and the whole family kind of lives together. The setting, I guess I should say, the setting of this novel is a few years after World War II. And so Agatha Christie wrote this probably in 1948, and then it was published in 1949. But the story takes place even a few years before that, so it's right after World War II has ended. A lot of the story doesn't depend upon the fact that we're living in post-war Great Britain. The family hasn't been too affected by the war, other than the fact that Aristide's younger son, or excuse me, his older son, Roger, and then his wife Clemency have had to move in to stay with Aristide and his family at the Three Gables because their house was bombed during the war. So there are a few references to the war, but it's not. If you've read another Agatha Christie book, which is called "There Is a Tide," which is sometimes also called "Taken at the Flood," they have different titles, whether they're published in England or United States. That book described post-war Great Britain in great detail, and there was a lot of people who were affected by the fact that England was kind of in a slump after a kind of a recession after the war was over. This book doesn't touch on that at all. You're not gaining a lot of social insight to post-war England after the war. It's just basically it's the murder mystery. But again, going back to describing the family, so Aristide has been very generous to his family. Everybody in the family seems to like him, and there's not really does stand out a motive for anybody in their family to want to kill their father or their grandfather. But let's talk about the rest of the family. So we've got Aristide is been married to his wife. His first wife, Marcia, who is the mother of Aristide's children, has died. Again, the book is taking place right after World War II. Marcia's been dead for a long time. Aristide's children are fully grown adults. Marcia died shortly after the turn of the century, and there was nothing mysterious about the way that she died. She had pneumonia and died from pneumonia. Aristide did marry again. He married a much younger woman, and her name is Brenda. She's in her mid-30s. And when the book starts to take place, Aristide and his second wife, the much younger wife, have been married for about 10 years now. The family doesn't really like Brenda. They see her as being a gold digger. But apparently Aristide and Brenda were really in love, and they got along really well. But the rest of the family suspects that Brenda is the main suspect in the murder of Aristide. One thing I should mention is how Aristide was killed. And so he takes Esserin injections. So he needs insulin because his body's starting to slow down. He takes insulin, but he also takes Esserin injections because of his glaucoma. And so the Esserin was the poison that somebody used to kill Aristide. Okay, now the rest of the family is interesting as well. So Roger is Aristide's oldest son. Roger is a failed businessman, and so he's just one of those people who doesn't have the business acumen or the business skill that his father did. He was given the ability to run the catering company that I mentioned earlier that Aristide helped build up his fortune with, and Roger has run the catering company into the ground, and the catering company is on its last legs and it's going to fail, and it's basically Roger's fault, and Roger had to be bailed out by his father. So maybe Roger has the motive of appearing to be a failure, and maybe he wants to knock off his father because that will make him successful in his own way. Roger has a wife, and her name is Clemency, and Clemency is a scientist, and she is a very interesting person, a very interesting character in the story because she has no desire for money or material gain in any way. She lives a very Spartan lifestyle, a very down-to-earth lifestyle. She eats very little, and she's always thinking about scientific advancements and things like that. And so I guess maybe if she had a motive for killing Aristide, it would be that she had the scientific know-how to go about doing it and doing it in a very efficient way. Aristide has a second son who has survived. He and his first wife had many kids, but only the two sons are really the only direct children of Aristide that play a role in the story. And they all live in the same house. Philip is the younger of the two sons that has survived, and he is a historian who writes history books that are not very well. They don't sell very well. He has a very limited audience, and so but he is just devoted to his historical research and then writing his obscure historical texts. So there's Philip, the younger of the two sons that has survived. Philip has a wife named Magda, and Magda is a little bit of an eccentric. She is a woman who is a stage actress, and she loves acting on the stage, and her craft has become her life, and she interacts with other people kind of like she is on stage. And so the other people in the story kind of view Magda as being maybe a little bit overly dramatic, and she's somebody who just lives out her craft in all her interactions with everybody. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this story is that both of the marriages appear to be very, very happy marriages. Roger and Clemency get along really great and are completely devoted to each other. And Philip and Magda get along, as different as they are, they get along great and they're completely devoted to each other. So both of the marriages seem to be very, very happy. Philip and Magda have 3 children who are kind of interesting characters as well. The oldest character is Sophia, and she is 24 or thereabout. And after the war, she went down to Egypt during the war, and she worked in Egypt in the Foreign Office during World War II. Then she came back to Great Britain. Sophia is in love with a man named Charles Hayward, and they met when they were in Egypt during the war. And Charles is probably the main character in the story, and in a way he's one of the detectives, although he's not really officially working for Scotland Yard. His father, Charles Hayward, his father was, I believe his name's Arthur. Arthur Hayward is one of the associate chiefs of Scotland Yard, so like the associate commissioner of Scotland Yard. So Charles has connections to Scotland Yard. And so it's suggested after Aristide is killed that Charles go down because he knows the family, because he's in love with Sophia, and they have plans on getting married. And he and Sophia, Charles is in his mid-30s. Charles and Sophia, because they're the main couple in the story, it's assumed that eventually that they're going to get married. In fact, Sophia has said to Charles that we can't get married until after my grandfather's murder has been solved, and then we can get married. So Sophia is one of the main characters in the story, and she also is obviously, in some ways she's very much like her grandfather. She has good sense, and she's practical. She's one of those type of characters, not maybe caught up in a kind of like a niche or a small interest thing like maybe her father is, who's devoted to his history books, and Sophia's mother devoted to being a stage actress. Sophia seems to be more clear, sensed like her grandfather, and practical. And there are 2 younger siblings that Sophia has, Philip and Magda's younger kids. Eustace is about 16, and he's an intelligent boy, but unfortunately he came down with infantile paralysis, and so his mobility and strength are limited. And so he, being a 16-year-old, he is tutored at home. And so Eustace has a tutor, and that tutor's name is Lawrence. And so Lawrence comes in to tutor Eustace. And it's rumored by the family that Lawrence is also having an affair with Brenda, with Aristide's young wife, Brenda. And then rounding out the family, there's a couple more people in the family that I need to talk about. Rounding out the family is Josephine, who is the youngest daughter of Philip and Magda. Josephine is 11 or 12, and she's described in the book as being ugly, but also being very intelligent and a little bit of a snoop and a busybody. So she likes going around the house and trying to, she and Charles kind of form a little bit of a friendship. And Josephine tells Charles, and she reads a lot of crime novels, and she's saying in crime novels, this is always what happens. And so this is what you should do, because this is always what happens in other crime novels that she's read. So she's kind of very avid about finding out who killed her grandfather and trying to help Charles solve the case. Then there is an interesting character named Edith de Havilland, and she is Aristide's first wife, Marcia. She is Marcia's sister, and she came to stay with the family after Marcia died back in the early turn of the century. And then she kind of helped raise the kids, and then she kind of just stayed there to help. Now she's helping to raise the grandkids, watching out for especially Eustace and Josephine, and kind of just trying to be helpful to the family. And so Edith has been living in with a family for a very, very long time, so she's considered part of the family. And then the other characters that we need, I already mentioned Lawrence. There's a nanny. Her name's Janet, but she's often called just Nanny, and she helps take care of Josephine and Eustace. As you can probably imagine, Magda is not a very good mother because she's so interested and wrapped up in her theatrical aspirations, and she often leaves the Three Gables to go act in stage plays around England. She's often an absent mother, and so Josephine and Eustace look maybe more to Nanny than they do to their own mother, and helping them raise them. And so you have all these characters that I've mentioned, and any one of these characters could be the murderer. And that's what's great about these types of Agatha Christie novels. I really, really like this concept that she's come up with. You have this family, and somebody is crooked. Somebody is a murderer, and you don't know who it is, and you're just trying to explore the family dynamics. And Agatha Christie, she drops clues here and there, but they're not great clues. So it's more about the personality. Who has the personality to be a murderer? And of course, one of the things that happens in a lot of these Agatha Christie stories is that there's a false ending to the story. And so you're reading along, and she gives you this ending, and you're like, "Ooh, is this is where she's going to tell us who the murderer is?" But know that there's a false ending, and then there's even a more astonishing conclusion to the story. And that's one of the things I really like about Agatha Christie novels, is a lot of times she'll use this false ending and she'll build your hopes up, but then she's got even a better conclusion to the story. The characterization is pretty good in this story, and I have to say the ending is phenomenal. I didn't see the ending coming, although I had read a spoiler about who the murderer was, so I actually knew who the murderer was, because unfortunately I stumbled on a spoiler when I was looking at things on YouTube, and somebody blew the ending for me. So I kind of knew who the murderer was, even though the story was one I hadn't read before. There's a movie version of this with Glenn Close in it. It's a really good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. So why is this not a top tier movie? Why is this one a little bit lower? I'd have to say maybe that the characterization isn't quite as strong in some of her other novels, and maybe you never really get the sense that there is. You never really get the sense that all the characters could possibly be the murderer. Some of the other characters are maybe, some of the side characters may be a little bit underdeveloped. I want to read just a little bit to you so you can kind of get a feel of how Charles is investigating the murderer. And so in this scene, Charles is talking to Brenda, who most people in the family hope that Brenda is the murderer. They suspect her, and they hope that she is, because then they can just evict her, and then they can go on as a family living together without breaking any of the family dynamics. So everybody's pretty much hopeful that Brenda is the murderer. So Charles is talking to her. I vowed to myself that I'd be a really good wife to him, and I was. I ordered all kinds of food he liked and wore the colors he fancied, and I did all I could to please him, and he was happy. But we never got rid of that family of his, always coming and sponging and living in his pocket. She's talking about Aristide, of course. Old Miss de Haviland, I think she ought to have gone away when he got married. I said so. But Aristide said she's been here so long, it's her home now. The truth is he liked to have them all about and underfoot. They were beastly to me, but he never seemed to notice that or mind about it. Roger hates me. Have you seen Roger? He's always hated me. He's jealous. And Philip's so stuck up on it, he never speaks to me. And now they're trying to pretend I murdered him, and I didn't. I didn't. She leaned towards me. Please believe I didn't. I found her very pathetic. The contemptuous way that Leonidas' family had spoken of her, their eagerness to believe that she had committed the crime. Now at this moment it all seemed possible, positively inhuman conduct. She was alone, defenseless, hunted down. And if it's not me, they think it's Lawrence, she went on. And what about Lawrence, I asked. I'm terribly sorry for Lawrence. He's delicate and he couldn't go and fight. It's not because he was a coward, it's because he's sensitive. I try to cheer him up and make him feel happy. He has to teach those horrible children. Eustace is always sneering at him. And Josephine, well, you've seen Josephine. You know what she's like. I said I hadn't met Josephine yet. Sometimes I think that child isn't right in her head. She has horrible, sneaky ways, and she looks queer. She gives me the shivers sometimes. I didn't want to talk about Josephine. I harkened back to Lawrence Brown. I harked back to Lawrence Brown. Who is he, I asked. Where does he come from? I had phrased it clumsily. She flushed. He hasn't anybody particular. He's just like me. What chance have we got against all of them? Don't you think you're being a little hysterical? No, I don't. They want to make out that Lawrence did it, or that I did. They've got the policeman on their side. What chance have I got? You mustn't work yourself up, I said. Why shouldn't it be one of them who killed him, or someone from outside, or one of the servants? There's a certain lack of motive. Oh, motive. What motive have I got, or Lawrence? I felt rather uncomfortable as I said. They might think, I suppose, that you or Lawrence are in love with each other, that you wanted to marry. She sat up bolt right. That's a wicked thing to suggest, and it's not true. We've never said a word of that kind to each other. I've just been sorry for him and tried to cheer him up. We've been friends, that's all. You do believe me, don't you? I did believe her. That is, I believe that she and Lawrence were, as she put it, only friends. But I also believe that possibly unknown to herself, she was actually in love with a young man. It was with that thought in mind that I went downstairs in search of Sophia. Okay, so it's a great murder mystery, and the ending is phenomenal. It's one I think that you'll really, really enjoy. Yeah, stay tuned as we see which ones I like even better than Crooked House. Hope you're having a good day.